it's incredibly frustrating how well-equipped we are to talk about almost every form of art except the one we listen to the most.
Oh, absolutely. It's a huge blind spot.
Right. Like you go out, you watch a great film, and you immediately have the vocabulary ready to go. You can talk about the lighting, the framing, the character arcs.
Mm-hmm.
Or you eat a fantastic meal and you can describe the acidity or the umami, the texture.
Yeah, exactly.
But then you hear a piece of music that just, it absolutely alters your brain chemistry. And you run to your friend to explain this life-changing song. You open your mouth, and what comes out?
You just say, it has a really good beat.
It has a good beat. That's it. That's all we have.
It's the ultimate bottleneck in human communication, really. We're trying to take the completely invisible, ephemeral experience of sound waves hitting our eardrums and translate that into concrete language.
Right.
And because music hits our emotions long before it hits our logic, we just, we usually fall completely short.
Yeah. Well, welcome to the English Boost podcast. Today, we are taking on that exact problem. We're looking at some really comprehensive guides and frameworks for musical language to figure out how professional reviewers, music educators, and content creators actually bridge that massive gap between raw audio and human language.
Yeah, it's a fascinating area.
It really is. So the goal here is to equip you with the exact vocabulary and, more importantly, the structural techniques to translate the emotional experience of music into compelling words. And by the end of this in-depth exploration, we're going to look at how artificial intelligence is currently rewiring this entire translation process.
Which is wild, but the ability to articulate sound is just a massive advantage.
Definitely.
Music carries this driving, undeniable emotional impact, but without the right tools, our descriptions of it stay painfully two-dimensional.
Yeah.
If you want to explain why a specific track makes you want to cry or dance or, drive incredibly fast down the highway in the middle of the night,
Yes.
you have to understand the architecture of the language used to describe it.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because if we want to paint those poetic pictures with our words, we can't just start with the poetry, right?
Right, here.
We have to start with the structural blueprint of the music itself, which means talking about time.
Time is the canvas of music.
I like that.
Yeah, and the foundation of describing how music moves through time starts with tempo and rhythm. So tempo is simply the speed. But instead of just giving a number, like, beats per minute.
Like 120 BPM or whatever.
Exactly. Classical terminology gives us words that imply a physical state. So you have adagio, which describes a slow, contemplative piece.
Okay.
It mimics a resting heartbeat. Then you have andante, which literally translates to a walking pace.
Oh, interesting.
Arius, moderate, steady, something your body can naturally just, sync up with while you're moving. And on the other end, you have allegro.
Which is the fast one.
Right. Allegro is fast, energetic, mimicking an elevated heart rate.
But the tempo is just the grid.
Right.
The rhythm is how you actually place the notes onto that grid.
That is the crucial distinction, yes. A tempo can be a steady 120 beats per minute, but the rhythm inside that tempo can be incredibly simple or wildly complex.
Right.
You might have a steady metronomic 4/4 beat. Think of a standard dance track where the kick drum hits right on every single count.
Boom, 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 boom.
Exactly. But where it gets really interesting is when you introduce syncopation.
Okay, syncopation is one of those words people throw around a lot. But what is actually happening in the brain when we hear a syncopated rhythm?
So when a rhythm is syncopated, the musical accents fall on the offbeats.
The offbeats.
Yeah, the spaces between the main pulses. You hear this constantly in jazz, funk, Latin music, and the reason it makes you want to move is entirely neurological.
Wait, really?
Yeah, our brains are prediction machines. When a song sets up a tempo, your brain predicts exactly when the next beat should arrive.
Okay, I see where this is going.
Syncopation denies that expectation. It places the emphasis just a millisecond before or after you expect it. And that micro-denial creates a physical tension in the listener, and your body naturally wants to lean in and resolve it by dancing or tapping your foot.
It's almost like the music is playing a game of catch with you, but throwing the ball slightly off to the side, so you have to reach for it.
That's a great way to put it. And if you want to make that game of catch even harder, you introduce polyrhythms.
Oh boy.
Which is playing two conflicting rhythms at the exact same time. It's like listening to the inner gears of a mechanical watch where different cogs are spinning at different rates, but somehow they all lock together
Yeah.
to keep the time.
That's a really cool image.
Yeah.
So if rhythm and tempo were the foundation, like the skeletal structure of time, melody and harmony are the actual flesh and blood. The
Exactly.
melody is the part we sing in the shower. But the source material talks a lot about the direction of a melody. Why does
Yeah.
it matter if a melody is ascending or descending?
It matters because of how we physically produce sound. When you describe an ascending melody, so one that climbs higher and higher in pitch, you are describing a buildup of energy. Think about a vocalist. To hit higher notes, a singer has to use more breath support, more physical tension in their vocal folds, just more sheer effort.
That makes sense.
And thanks to mirror neurons in our brain, when we hear an ascending melody, we subconsciously feel that physical effort and tension. That's why ascending melodies feel triumphant or energetic.
And a descending melody feels like a physical exhale,
Yes.
like the tension is releasing.
You've got it.
Yeah.
The melody feels like it's settling down, which is why it's so often used in melancholic or calming music.
Which brings us to harmony. If melody is the single line we sing, harmony is what happens when you stack multiple notes on top of each other.
Yes.
And the two big words here are consonance and dissonance.
Right. So consonant harmony is stable. The frequencies of the notes mathematically align in a way that feels smooth to the human ear. Dissonant harmony is unstable. The frequencies clash.
You know, I always think about consonance and dissonance like magnets.
Oh, okay. How so?
Well, consonance is like two puzzle pieces snapping together perfectly.
Right.
Or magnets aligning the right way. The edges match. There's no resistance. It's just a perfectly unified picture.
Right.
But dissonance, that is like taking two incredibly powerful magnets and trying to force their positive poles together.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah, you can physically feel this invisible, vibrating friction between them. They desperately want to push away from each other and resolve into a stable state. So dissonance creates that edgy, suspenseful feeling that makes you lean forward in your seat, like a cliffhanger in a movie where the hero is just dangling over the edge.
The magnet analogy is brilliant because dissonance truly is about friction.
Yeah.
In music, a dissonant chord demands resolution. When a composer holds a dissonant chord, they are suspending you in that magnetic friction, making you wait for the relief of a consonant point.
Payoff.
Exactly. And understanding these structural terms, tempo, syncopation, dissonance, it helps you immediately identify the mechanics of a song. If a track feels incredibly energetic and anxious, it's not magic. It's likely an allegro tempo, heavily syncopated, featuring a tense, ascending, dissonant melody.
But even if you have those exact same structural elements, right, like the exact same dissonant chords played the exact same allegro tempo, it is going to feel completely different if it's played on a delicate acoustic guitar versus a heavily distorted synthesizer.
It changes everything.
The instrument itself changes the emotional weight of the notes.
It does. And this introduces the concept of timbre, which is the specific tone color of an instrument. It's what makes a middle C played on a piano sound entirely different from a middle C played on a trumpet.
Right.
When you look at the vocabulary used by reviewers to describe timbre, it becomes incredibly sensory.
I'm really glad you brought that up because looking at the source material, I have to be honest, the vocabulary here is wild.
It is, yeah.
For string instruments, a violin is described as silvery or piercing, while a cello is chocolatey and melancholic.
Mm-hmm.
Wind instruments get words like a breathy, bird-like flute or a sultry, honking saxophone. And for electronic elements, we talk about the vintage analog warmth of a synthesizer.
The language is undeniably vivid.
But I'm going to push back on this pretty hard.
Okay, let's hear it.
Isn't this just pretentious music journalism? Like, we're using words that belong to completely different senses to describe invisible sound waves.
Right.
Chocolatey is taste. Warm is touch. Silvery is sight. If I walk into a recording studio and tell an audio engineer I want the bass to sound more purple or chocolatey, they're going to laugh me out of the room, right?
Why do you think so?
Don't we just confuse things by mixing up our senses like this? Why don't we have dedicated audio words?
It sounds pretentious until you realize it's actually a biological necessity. Yeah, human language evolved primarily around our visual and tactile survival needs. We developed a massive vocabulary to describe the exact color of a poisonous berry or the texture of a sharp rock.
Okay, sure.
We did not evolve a dedicated vocabulary for critiquing audio frequencies. So to describe the invisible, we have to borrow from the tangible.
Oh, wow. So we're basically hacking our own language.
Exactly. We are using synesthesia-like metaphors because they bypass the analytical brain and hit our sensory memory directly.
That is so interesting.
And honestly, even an audio engineer understands these cross-sensory hacks. If you say a synthesizer sounds warm, the engineer instantly knows what you mean. It means it lacks harsh, piercing, high frequencies. It feels comforting physically like a heavy blanket.
Oh, I see.
If you say a snare drum is brittle, they know it has too much high-end frequency and lacks a solid low-end foundation. It sounds like it could literally snap. We use sensory metaphors because they're the most efficient shortcuts to emotional understanding.
Okay, when you put it like that, the chocolatey cello makes a lot more sense. It implies something rich, dark, and smooth, with no sharp edges.
Exactly. And beyond just single instruments, we use this evocative language to describe the overall texture and atmosphere of a track. Texture is how all those instruments layer together.
Right.
You could have a sparse track, maybe just a lone, breathy vocal, and a quiet acoustic guitar. It feels intimate, like the artist is sitting in the room with you. Or you could have a wall of sound texture where dozens of instruments are layered so densely that they create this monolithic wave of audio.
Or even a muddy track, right, where it's too congested.
Yes, muddy is a perfect textural word, and atmospheric imagery places the listener in a setting. Saying a piece of music sounds like sunlight filtering through forest leaves gives you a completely different expectation than saying it sounds like an urban concrete jungle at midnight.
The imagery gives the listener an immediate emotional anchor before they've even heard a single note.
Precisely.
So we now have this massive conceptual toolkit. We understand syncopation, the tension of ascending melodies, the magnetic friction of dissonance, and the cross-sensory language of warm synths and silvery violins.
You've got a lot.
We do. But how do we structure these words to actually communicate effectively? Because I imagine you do not talk about a song the same way to a casual listener as you would to a trained musician.
You definitely don't. Knowing your audience dictates the dialect you use.
Okay.
If you are communicating with a general audience, you want to rely heavily on the emotional anchors and the atmospheric imagery we just discussed. You might say, carefree guitar melodies dance over a steady driving rhythm. It's evocative, it's simple, anyone can picture it.
Sure.
But if you are talking to a technical audience, you strip away the poetry and you use specific music theory.
Give me the technical translation of those carefree guitar melodies.
The technical version would be the track features a 1-6-4-5 chord progression, with the lead guitar emphasizing the major seventh interval.
Oh, wow. Okay, let's break that down because I know we have listeners who aren't reading sheet music every day.
Yeah.
What is a 1-6-4-5 progression?
It is the foundational DNA of modern pop music. It refers to chords built on the first, sixth, fourth, and fifth notes of a musical scale.
Okay.
If you listen to almost any massive pop hit from the last 50 years, from the Beatles to Taylor Swift, they are heavily relying on that exact sequence of chords. It feels incredibly familiar and satisfying to the Western ear.
And what about the major seventh interval you mentioned?
Right, so that's talking about adding a specific note to a standard chord that creates a very distinct, slightly wistful, jazzy tension. Is a sound that says happy, but with a touch of nostalgia.
It's fascinating how different genres basically have their own regional dialects, too. The vocabulary completely shifts depending on what style of music you're diving into.
The genre dialects are incredibly specific. If you're reviewing electronic dance music, you aren't talking about major sevenths.
Right.
You are talking about drops, build-ups, and sidechain compression.
Sidechain compression. That is one of those terms that sounds like rocket science, but the effect is so recognizable once you know what it is.
It really is. It's that classic electronic dance music sound where the entire track seems to rhythmically pump or breathe.
Yeah.
Basically, the producer sets up a rule. Every time the massive kick drum hits, the volume of the bass line and the synthesizers aggressively ducks down for a split second to make room for the kick and then swells back up. It creates this intense, sucking, rhythmic pulse.
It literally forces your shoulders to bounce.
Yeah, you can't help it.
And what about jazz?
Jazz has a completely different lexicon. You're talking about the swing feel, the walking bass, and comping.
Comping. I'm going to guess that's short for accompaniment.
It is. It refers to the chords a pianist or guitarist plays behind the main soloist. But in jazz, you don't just strum a steady beat. Comping is highly interactive, unpredictable, and rhythmic. The accompanist is having a real-time conversation with the soloist, stabbing chords into the empty spaces.
That's a great way to describe it.
And then if you jump over to classical music, you get terms like rubato timing, which is the beautiful, expressive speeding up and slowing down of the tempo to add drama. The grid isn't rigid, it breathes with the conductor's hands.
So, assuming we know our audience and we know the genre dialect, the source material suggests a five-step layered approach to building a description.
Yes.
But I'll be honest, when I read the guide, it felt very rigid. Step 1, foundation. Step 2, harmony. Step 3, melody. Step 4, texture. Step 5, emotional impact.
Yeah, the list.
Nobody talks like a bulleted list at a dinner party.
Yeah.
How do we make this practical?
The best way to use that five-step framework without sounding like a textbook is to think of it like building a house for your listener.
Okay, I like that.
You don't hand them a list of materials, you walk them through the construction. Step 1 is pouring the concrete foundation, that's your tempo and rhythm. Is the house built on a slow, steady pulse or a frantic polyrhythmic grid?
Right.
Step 2 is putting up the walls and framing, that's your harmony. Is the structure stable and consonant, or is it filled with dissonant leaning walls?
Okay, so step 3, the melody, is the paint, the windows, the architectural features that catch your eye first.
Exactly. Step 4, texture, is the interior design. Is the house sparsely furnished and echoing, or is it dense, cluttered, and packed with artifacts?
Like the wall of sound we talked about.
Exactly. And finally, step 5 is the emotional impact. What does it actually feel like to stand inside that house? When you synthesize all of that into a fluid paragraph, you guide the listener through the space rather than just listing its dimensions.
Here's where it gets really interesting, though.
Yeah.
If you want to bypass the heavy construction altogether, the guide mentioned something I absolutely loved: comparative descriptions.
Yes, those are fun.
This is where you create a pop culture collision. Instead of listing out tempos and textures, you just say, imagine the Beatles meeting modern trap production. Or, if Pink Floyd wrote a lullaby.
Comparative descriptions are incredibly efficient because they offload the work onto the listener's cultural memory.
It's the ultimate mental shortcut. When you say the Beatles meeting modern track, I don't need you to explain the harmony or the rhythm. My brain instantly imagines lush 1960s pop vocal harmonies layered over aggressive, booming 808 bass lines and fast hi-hats.
Yeah.
You've just described melody, harmony, rhythm, and texture in 7 words.
It's powerful. But the reality is, whether you're using comparative metaphors or meticulously building the five-step house, analyzing music deeply requires massive cognitive bandwidth. Tracking the BPM, the chord progressions, the textures, and the genre dialects all at once is exhausting for the human brain.
It is.
Which brings us to the inevitable shift in this landscape, artificial intelligence. We now have a powerful new collaborator stepping in to do the heavy lifting.
This is where things get slightly sci-fi. The texts we are looking at highlight modern AI tools, like Fast Moro AI for visual generation, but specifically the Describe music platform for audio analysis. And what these platforms are doing is staggering. You don't have to sit there with a metronome and a notepad anymore. You upload an audio file, and the AI instantly provides flawless technical precision. It gives you the exact BPM, the time signature, the instrument detection. It even breaks down the spectral characteristics.
Spectral characteristics are basically the sonic fingerprint of the track.
Okay.
The AI analyzes the exact distribution of frequencies, how much energy is sitting in the sub-bass, the mid-range, the piercing highs. It sees the music as a complex mathematical topography. And it goes further than just physics. It performs emotional mapping.
Emotional mapping.
Yeah. Based on massive data sets of how humans have previously described audio, the AI can analyze the mood, the energy levels, and categorize the microgenre of a song in seconds.
I have to stop and really question the philosophy behind this. If I can just drag an MP3 into a browser and get a perfect, pristine spreadsheet of a song's soul, doesn't that make us incredibly lazy listeners?
It's a fair question.
It feels like reading the Wikipedia summary of a classic novel instead of actually reading the book. If the machine does all the analyzing, do we lose that deep personal connection to the art?
That is the central debate happening in music journalism and education right now. Are we outsourcing our critical listening? But the consensus from professionals leans toward a model of human-AI synergy.
Synergy, okay.
The machine is not there to replace the human reaction. It's there to handle the math. Think about it. Trying to figure out if a song is exactly 118 or 120 beats per minute, or struggling to identify if a background synthesizer is using a sawtooth wave or a square wave, that takes a lot of analytical brain power.
And it pulls you out of the emotional experience of the song.
It does. If you offload that objective data collection to the AI, You actually free up your cognitive bandwidth for cultural context. The AI gives you the architectural foundation, and you add the subjective soul.
Right.
The AI can tell you it's a 90 BPM track with prominent cello and dissonant harmony. But the AI does not know what it feels like to be heartbroken on a rainy Tuesday. Only the human can add the comparative metaphors and the emotional resonance.
The machine gives me the spectral topography, and I get to decide that it sounds like a chocolatey cello fighting a magnetic dissonance.
Exactly. But maintaining that human edge requires real effort. The guide outlines common pitfalls that writers and listeners fall into.
Oh, like what?
The biggest one is relying on subjective cliches. Calling a song a banger or saying it has a catchy hook is lazy. It tells the listener absolutely nothing about the architecture of the music.
Sure.
On the flip side, the other pitfall is technical overload. Dumping so much jargon onto the page that it reads like a stereo repair manual and alienates the reader completely.
I want to talk about how we actually practice staying in that sweet spot between technical and emotional. The source material recommends active listening exercises, and I tried one of these yesterday.
Oh, did you?
Yeah. It's called single element focus. You take a song, and you force your brain to only listen to the bass line.
How did it go?
My brain completely short-circuited.
Yeah, that happens.
I would track the bass line for about 10 seconds, and then the lead vocal would come in, and my attention would just get violently hijacked. I couldn't isolate the layers. Is there a trick to this?
It is remarkably difficult because producers explicitly design the vocal to hijack your attention.
Oh, well, that makes me feel better.
Yeah, you're fighting human nature. The trick is to physically engage with the element you are trying to isolate. If you are focusing on the bass, don't just listen. Tap your finger to the exact rhythm the bass is playing. If you are focusing on the drums, lightly beatbox the hi-hat pattern.
Okay, I see.
By tying a physical action to the specific frequency, you anchor your attention and prevent the melody from sweeping you away.
It's like going to the gym for your ears.
It really is a muscle that needs constant training. Another great exercise they mention is blind description. Have a friend play you a piece of music you've never heard from a genre you don't typically listen to without telling you the artist.
Oh, that sounds hard.
It is. Stripped of the cultural baggage, the album art, and the artist's persona, you are forced to rely entirely on your descriptive vocabulary to articulate what is happening in the speakers.
When we pull all these threads together, the syncopated rhythms, the cross-sensory vocabulary, the five-step architecture, and the AI analysis, the ultimate takeaway is so empowering.
It really is.
Whether you are a content creator trying to script a compelling video, an educator building a syllabus, or just a fan trying to share a track with a friend, you don't have to freeze up anymore. You don't have to settle for saying it has a good beat.
Having this toolkit transforms your relationship with music. You stop being a passive consumer, letting sound wash over you, and you become an active participant. You understand the mechanics of why a song moves you.
We've figured out how to bridge the gap and make the invisible magic of audio visible through language. But I know you have one more layer to add to this AI discussion before we go.
I do, and it flips this entire conversation on its head.
Okay.
We talked about how platforms like Describe Music can now flawlessly map the exact emotional footprint and spectral characteristics of any song. But consider the logical endpoint of that technology. If AI can now mathematically map the exact formula for human emotion in audio, will the future of music description lead to a world where artists start reverse engineering their music?
Wait, reverse engineering, do you mean writing a song to please the algorithm instead of the listener?
Exactly. Imagine you are a producer and you know that the AI streaming algorithms favor certain spectral characteristics, specific tempos, and specific dissonant tensions to label a song as uplifting or highly commercially viable.
Oh, wow.
You might stop writing from the heart and start tailoring your frequencies to please the machine first, ensuring it gets categorized perfectly for maximum playlist exposure. The human ear becomes secondary.
So what does this all mean? That is a wildly unsettling thought. We started out this whole journey just trying to figure out how to translate a good beat for our friends, and we end up staring down a future where the beat itself is being algorithmically designed for a server farm.
It's a real possibility.
Are we going to be listening to music or just auditing data structures? It definitely gives us a whole new way to listen to whatever comes on the radio tomorrow.
Thank you all for joining us on this in-depth exploration today. Keep your ears open, and we'll catch you next time on the English Boost podcast.